G'day folks, my name is Sean and this is Air Photography. Today we're going to go over some FPV updates that have been released for the DJI FPV drone. DJI has been busy releasing firmware updates. Yesterday they released an update for the Mini 2, adding compatibility with the smart controller, and around the same time they released a firmware update for the FPV system. I kind of figured one would be available soon. Usually after a new product is released, they always update the firmware to fix problems, add a few features, but the FPV system, we haven't had anything since it's been released. Now this update is fairly substantial. There's quite a bit that they've added. So we're going to take a look at the release notes and then we'll go over some of the things that have changed. Let's start with the release notes. This may take a minute because they did add quite a bit. First of all, they've added the ability to enable or disable subtitles under camera settings in the goggles. And that way when you're editing video in a third-party editor, you can bring in some of the telemetry data, different things like that. They've added the ability to trigger Find My Drone by pressing the mode and brake buttons simultaneously on the motion controller, and we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. Added a flashing auxiliary light when Find My Drone is triggered, and again, we're going to demonstrate that here in a minute. Another big one that a lot of people are going to like, they've added the ability to start and stop the motors in manual mode by using the C2 button. You can customize it, and I will again demonstrate that here in a second. Added the ability to view HDMI live broadcasts by plugging the smart controller into the goggles, and again we will demonstrate that. And a few other little things they've done there. They've optimized flight safety, optimized flight experience when using manual mode, and optimized flight experience when using the motion controller. Now, you can update this firmware one of two ways. You can use a laptop or computer and use the DJI Assistant app to update the firmware, or you can use the adapter that came with the kit, plug it into the USB-C port on the goggles, attach it to your phone, launch the Fly app, and then it will prompt you to install the updates. Personally, that's how I updated mine, and everything went through with no issue. However, I do want to mention that the batteries do have firmware as well that need to be updated, so you will have to update each individual one afterwards. It's as simple as leaving everything powered on, power off just the drone, pop in the new battery, power it back on, and it will prompt you to update the battery firmware. And on another note, there is a firmware update for the motion controller. This will have to be updated separately. Once you've updated everything else, power everything off, power it back on, link the motion controller to the drone, again plug in your phone and launch the Fly app. It will then prompt you to download the firmware for the motion controller. So that does have to be done separately. So let's go ahead here. I am going to power everything on and I'll show you some of the changes. It could get a little bit noisy here with all these fans running, so just bear with me. So the first thing we're going to take a look at here is how you can start and stop the motors by customizing your C2 button. Now that's when you're in manual mode, so if we switch it over to manual mode here, you can see how the motors will start and stop. The first two positions are the stop positions, and then the bottom one will start the motors. Now that only works when you put it into manual mode, and that stick has to be down. I don't have my stick loose in there, so if I try to do it with it in the center position, it's not going to work. But if I hold the stick down, put it into manual, you can see there it works just fine. Another thing that they've done is change the way the Find My Drone behaves. The way it was before, I believe the C1 button, double press, it triggered the beeping. So if you're out in some tall grass, you can start the drone beeping. But what they've done here is they've added a flashing LED light as well. So you can now set your C1 button to flashing and beeping. They've changed the wording in there as well. So I'll just demonstrate that here for you. So you can see that LED light starts to flash and it beeps. Again, a double press will turn that off. You can actually trigger the Find My Drone from the motion controller now by simultaneously holding down the mode button and the brake button. Now another thing you can do here, if you have the smart controller, you can take the USB-C cable that comes with it, plug it into the back there, then plug it into the USB-C on the goggles. If we go and launch our apps, we have FPV Live. You can see there we have a live view. You can then use the HDMI on the smart controller for live broadcasting to other devices. Now, of course, there's probably other little changes that they've made that they didn't list. They tend to do that. If I find that they've really changed anything of interest, I will definitely make an updated video. Now, one thing that they didn't add with this first firmware update, which I was hoping they would, is the ability to capture telemetry either by recording a screen recording on the goggles or by your phone if you have your smartphone plugged in. It would just be nice to have that telemetry, especially for people who make tutorials or you just want to see how fast you were flying at the time, different things like that. Of course, you now have subtitles which you can use, but a nice graphical interface over the video would have been nice as well. Hopefully that does come in a future firmware update. So yeah, folks, just a quick video on the new firmware update for the DJI digital FPV system. If there's anything that I've missed or you've discovered any other changes that are interesting, make sure you post them down below in the comments. I want to thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and got some value out of it. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we'll see you in the next one.